Okay, so this is really the build-up, or the follow-up, sorry, not build-up, from our project success criteria. And we recognize that in some project cases, we have to actually define our project ourselves. So we are in the pre-definition phase of the project, if you think about the life cycle of our project, or the project process, as I called it. So the reading is still kind of the same, yeah. So if you have read those chapters, you have probably already seen the links in the papers. Darren Dacher, he actually explains a lot more to that, and actually explains as well how you have to monitor this throughout the whole project lifecycle. Yeah? So interesting concepts there. So today we will really kind of go through the stakeholder satisfaction. I show you different identification or methods of identifying your stakeholders and managing them. And I refer actually to a case study that I conducted with a major project association. Before the Olympics, we had a workshop series with supposedly leaders from industries, leaders from academia, and as well very powerful investors to discover what are actually the challenges in a project like the Olympics to manage stakeholder expectations. And we came up with, you have to apologize the terminology, 10 commandments. Yeah, it's not 10 commandments, but it was recognized of what we should do to manage successfully stakeholders. And there's a lot hidden in stakeholder management that explains as well why the Olympics were maybe portrayed in a certain way. Then we have to come back the whole loop to our initial left behind project context and environment. I talk a little bit about methods and tools that we have there to actually guide us through in different project settings. And I explain as well a little bit how you can use them. And then last but not least, we return actually to the project success notion, but we do that with scope management. And I explain a little bit how scope actually has elements of movement throughout the project. So that is important as well for our brief. So on the conceptual side, to start off, where are we? We are still in the first three stages. Yeah, if you look at the bottom process, yeah, of the overall life cycle, if you want, of the project, yeah, we are still at the concept feasibility to definition stage. And the definition stage, you can already see we have an overlap with the project delivery. So this is really when we are already starting the planning. I have the slides as well later on to remind us. So in the first part, I want to really come to the stakeholders and ask the question. This is what we started off the workshop with in a beautiful setting. This was in Oxford. There are a few lovely hotels. Yeah, so this is normally where the MPA holds the meetings. And they asked the question, why are you here? Why are you here and not somebody better than you? Yeah, so they're very confrontational. And I want to ask the same question. Who are you and what do you want? Yeah, this is a very confrontational recognition of stakeholders, and this is often how you have to justify your existence in being consulted in areas like that. So we talk about stakeholder recognitions, idea, expectation gathering. We have done that as well in the seminar last week. More or less successful, yeah. There are as well emotions to be experienced along the way. And then the management along the process. So we talk as well a little bit about this. So let's get started. First, a reminder, quite conceptual, managing projects. Yeah, so just to remind us, the management of projects involves managing the definition and delivery of the project for stakeholder success. Yeah? And the focus is on the project in its context. We know this from last week, but important to remember at that point, because there were dependencies, and this is another reminder. Yeah? Dependencies of project success. There are elements in terms of plurality. This is above, yeah, and where interest may lie. But contextually, we had the recognition that there are different elements. Yeah? Managing the team successful management of a project, and then of course achieving greater benefits for the project's business or supply chain. Yeah? And here we have to think already about scope when we come to the definitions. And then achieving long-term strategic advantages with projects, which arrive from the stakeholder consultation. Yeah? So this is very important. And okay, and the last one is really what Alex will talk as well a lot about, creating the sustainable drive. Yeah? That you really embed as well potentially a project into a visionary legacy that can be described as something like being sustainable and prosperous. Yeah? Okay, so much to this at the beginning to warm up again. So what does that actually mean for stakeholders? I wanted really to start off with giving you a few perspectives from stakeholders, yeah, because we did the stakeholder recognition in the seminar, and there were as well, if you have done the tasks that I've uploaded in the e-learning papers, yeah, there were as well the questions, who are our stakeholders and what do they bring to the table? Here we have a few typical quotes. Yeah, those are not my own quotes. I've captured them in interviews, yeah, and many people have actually done this. So there's a lot of literature on what we normally get in the initial stakeholder consultation, which are directly impacting on our project setting. Yeah. So marketing manager from a big automotive firm. This is actually a lie. It was a big cluster, and it was not just marketing manager. He was actually the head of marketing and PR, yeah, or public relations, which was quite interesting. The product needs to be developed in shortest time possible. We need it yesterday. And that was, the competitor had just brought out a super alternative product to their mainstream product. Yeah, so you're driven suddenly by markets and competition. Yeah. Then a main client in an IT implementation project. That was IT implementation actually in a cluster of universities. Yeah, this is quite interesting. I want a good working solution to the problem, not promises that it will work one day. Yeah, so this is that is actually surprising for many reasons. First of all, it was surprising to me that universities don't do that themselves, but outsource the service. But the second was that the development was aimed, they had the same problems like normal projects. They had already aspired solution, but no in-time solutions. Yeah? And that was a big issue. And last but not least, and this got a little bit lost in the debates of the seminars I found, was a team member perspective. Yeah? Maybe of a new product development project. And here's the quote, I want to work in a stimulating environment with good people and a manager who knows what they want and sticks to it, not changing things all the time. Yeah, so uncertainty is certainly not appreciated at that point. Yeah, and I have three more, then I will leave it with the perspectives. We want here main client, like a large defense project, and this doesn't even belong to the case studies yet. Oh, this is bad. A lot of defense today. We want this project to stay out of the news and out of the public eye until it is finished. The last thing we need here is bad publicity about this project. Yeah, we could have replaced this quote probably as well with the Olympics committee that was actually running the Olympics project in London. They had similar aspiration. They certainly didn't want bad press. Where do we have similar major projects that received a lot of bad press recently?
Brazil, Qatar.
Brazil, Qatar, you name it. Yeah. In a way, major projects like this have always a temptation. Yeah. What are the budgets for projects like that, roughly? I don't mind Qatar. What height are we? I'm not after an explicit sum.
Billions.
Yeah, billions. How much are the anybody aware of the huge Chinese rail project at the moment in China? Massive infrastructure project. Sorry, I'm jumping a little bit between major projects. China, quickest trains. It will be quicker than a plane. This is pretty cool, right? And not a bad. Well, okay. And not the wait at the airport, yeah. So this is pretty cool. What height are those projects? What is a cross-rail project in the UK? Biggest cross-rail project in Europe. How much, roughly?
No, I was thinking of a different project.
The cross-rail project. We are rebuilding infrastructure around London as well with rail. roughly? I take guesses.
15
15? What? Million?
billion.
Billion. Yeah, 50 billion, yeah? China, roughly?
100 billion.
It's a trillion. How much was the financial crisis of the world? 3 trillion. Yeah, so our major projects are the size of like whole world economy bring downs. Yeah, so this is important to recognize. Yeah, I'm just saying that there are budgets that are quite impressive. Yeah. So be aware of this. This is quite impressive, actually.
Were the Chinese involved in the global recession?
Sorry, I didn't want... No, this is a misassumption, sorry. The global economic crisis had nothing to do with the infrastructure project in China. Yeah, there's no correlation there. I'm not saying that this money disappeared and suddenly they're building this massive project. Yeah? This is not what happened. Yeah, I like the analogy though. Yeah? Oh, Robert made an analogy here. Maybe we have here a link. No, there's no link. At least not that I know of. Yeah? So just to be sure. Yeah? Okay, so just to give you an idea, yeah, what is as well behind this? Yeah? There's a huge potential for bad publicity. Yeah? Then a little bit more applied, again coming back from the major projects, a normal project, a project manager, yeah, in a firm relocation project. Yeah, this is as well normally good fun. We want this project to be seen as a success in years to come. Yeah. So again, we have here, what is the dimension here? If you want this to be a success for years to come, do you mind to have the perfect solution at hand when you move? What is the time implication here? What is our stakeholder formulating here?
Futuristic.
Pardon?
Being futuristic.
Yeah, futuristic, and it's a timeline. Yeah, so time is not a pressing thing necessarily. As long as everybody is accommodated and nobody has to work on the street, you know, then there is space for interpretation. Yeah? So this is certainly a dimension that we could analyze here. And then last but not least, I had as well a project sponsor, yeah, in a new business group. This is a role that is worth researching because this has popped up more recently. Project sponsors and project client are not always the same people. I'm prepared to make a certain level of investment, but when they, the project team, have spent that, there is no more. We will cancel the project. Yeah? So here you are starting certainly on the edge already. What is the implication for this? For us as a project manager?
Limits to what we can do.
Yeah. So the budget is a total. And if you start off with a budget, this is often quite a bad setting. We come to that when we talk about scope later on. Yeah. So this is something to keep in mind. Okay, why do we look at those? Well, stakeholder identification we had that as well last week. It's not so much about figuring out who is involved, and in the beautiful stakeholder identification and who is involved in our workshops, we had a few times at the brainstorming session even the rest of the world on the poster. I was quite impressed with that. Yeah, so clearly there's always interpretation where we could somehow draw whole of humanity or the whole of the environment in at some point with some projects. Yeah? But of course, this is making it incredibly difficult to manage. Yeah? And quite frankly, it defeats the purpose of the projection that we defined last week. Yeah? So often we are actually pushed into the notion of deciding on a hierarchy of our stakeholders, yeah, and drawing a line. So who do we just, well, let's start the other way around. Who are the core stakeholders that we actually use to figure out what success is? I've given you a few examples for stakeholder identification and to draw a stakeholder map. Visualization techniques are often very powerful, and they remind as well where potential stakeholders are hidden. Yeah? So it's really important as well at that point to normally set the stakeholder in the role of the project. Yeah, this means you have to identify the person or the group that has an interest and set them into context of your project. Yeah? If you just leave them there as a name and maybe their phone number and what hobbies they have, which is a good start, you don't actually show how this impacts on your project. So there's a contextualization, and I gave you this one before, with the core team. You remember this was quite daunting. I just go through it. You have all seen it in the seminar. This was one way of doing it. The roles described here have, of course, different meanings. So in a way, this is heavily discussed in literature, and I encourage you to read up on this, because the roles have implications to different industries. This is a very industry-specific setting. In some industries, we are not very shift with stakeholder analysis. We come actually to this one now. Which industry could this be? I take guesses. Which one do you think was this wonderful onion, traditionally? An onion diagram, has anybody seen a wonderful onion like this before for stakeholder analysis in an industry? Does anybody work for marketing? Has anybody Buena Vista or Walt Disney? If anybody is interested in the dark medium of wonderful movies, this is one way of recognizing stakeholders. When they do actually the targeting and identify as well potential market segments that they want to view movies or attract attention from. So very powerful thing. We have this as well a little bit in clothes design, fashion design. So this is probably a softer way and more holistic one. Whereas here this is actually quite pragmatic. Pragmatic construction, and this was the right translation though. So alternatively, stakeholder identification, and this is typically done in construction. So here we have like internal stakeholders. So first of all, a divide between internal and external stakeholders, in their mean of power as well. So you have on the internal stakeholders the demand side, for whom you actually design this project. And then if you want the supply side. And those are the guys performing the project, if you want. And then external stakeholders, they are divided into private and public. And here you have private, for example, residents or activist groups, local landlords, and a few more. Those are summarizing terms. In the construction industry, we have actually professionalized the roles. This is not necessarily true to all other industries. And public, you have as well other elements. I have another one, and that is probably the most common one. And in the projects that I have come across, I always see this, and I'm not quite sure why, because there's actually a dimension as well missing. And but it's used a lot in literature as well. So this is a normative guide to stakeholders, and it works quite simple. It's a Cartesian coordination system. So on the y, I've mixed. No, never mind. On here the y-axis, you have the power implication. And so how much power do they have to impact on your project? So you identify first the stakeholders and then rate them. How powerful are they? So if they have little power, then they are in the monitor and inform bit. And to decide if you just monitor and inform them, you have an x-axis, which is the level of interest. How interested are they in your project, or how affected are they in the implementation of your project, or in the outcome of your project? So be very aware that there is input, process, and output that potentially stakeholders are interested in. If you want to study a little bit how to do it wrong, have a look at the Berlin airport, for example, in Germany. Very entertaining. They missed this completely, and they missed the input and the process. They just looked at the output, which was actually kind of well done, but they missed the other two stages. That people may not like construction going on around their parks either. And all kinds of other stuff too. So that is the level of interest axis, and you can see at the bottom if they have a little bit interest to non-interest and little power, you should still keep an eye on them, monitor. Yeah? Make sure that if they develop an interest, that you can inform them. If they are actually quite powerful, but have no interest or not so much of an interest in your project, then it's still worthwhile to satisfy them, to not upset them. Yeah? And this is really where this sits. And then we have, if they're interested and they want to be a little bit involved, then there's an informing stage. And sometimes it makes even sense to have breakout session or focus groups to actually inform them and allow a feedback loop. Yeah? And when they are powerful, this is actually when you should consider strong cooperation. Yeah? If they're powerful and very interested, cooperate. I hope that makes sense. I have a suggestion here. This is actually another axis which kind of gives a third dimension to it, if you want. I would just want to classify in a way how active our stakeholders are, because this is something that has been criticized in literature enormously, that there is a notion of activism as well in it. And we had that in the construction-based stakeholder analysis. But here I would recommend just to think about it where they stand in terms of activism. So you notice at the top of the axis, you have championing, so they are proactive, they advertise for your project, and maybe even be involved in it. Yeah, so this is of course super, and this can actually change during the project. Yeah, so this is a monitoring tool during the project lifecycle as well. And then at the bottom, this is probably what you would hate to have in your project. There's potential sabotage. Yeah? And in between we have neutrality. People are not really too much bothered. They don't really participate. Yeah? Okay, let's explain a little bit the power. So this is from this. Power, we have three different dimensions here that I want to go in. This comes really from Winch. The first dimension of power that is normally referred to, this is overt power. And I hope it works. So A tells B that, what is overt power? What is a good example for this maybe? Has somebody come across overt power? What would be an organizational example of overt power?
The hierarchical structure, there's the main director and general manager.
Yeah. So as a project manager, you may have the possibility of making suggestions, but the decision is ultimately with person B, who selects indirectly from the options and may even suggest other ones. Yeah. So I have a second one. Actually, overt power goes a little bit deeper. I have a selection in a second. I'll give you the whole range. There's other ways of power influence. But second dimension is really agenda setting power. This is you kind of subscribe what are the options. Yeah. So this assumes that person B doesn't have the choice of making their own mind up about it. Yeah, so this is very powerful actually. Third one is hegemonic power or hegemony. It's a power where you have absolute power on what's going on. Yeah? So this is a when do I have something like this? This is actually when you have to follow a certain process, and the performance is even specified. There are a few industries where you have that. If you haven't come across it, your industry is probably not impacted by it. But we have like procedures, for example, for food and drink industry. There are actually prescriptions that you can't get around because they're standardized that way. And it's the only way of doing it if you want to be within the remit of production settings. Yeah? Again, here's a lot of literature hidden. To just explain the overt power, maybe that there's physical power. We don't experience that so much. This is actually potentially threat, yeah, physical threat. Then positioning power, resource power. I don't give you the resources if you don't do this. Yeah. Then expert power. This is often what we have in a project context. Yeah. Where you ask the team members that have role responsibility, or maybe professionals, yeah, the experts in your team, to decide, and they make the decision. Yeah? And then we have, of course, personal power. This is, there's all kinds of personal power. Normally it's described as charisma. Yeah? So that is a quite interesting one. And it's a very powerful, but very soft. Yeah? You notice here already the implication for this. And not every power suits every individual. Yeah? So if you go into the philosophy of morale, if you want, there's a lot of disagreement with those. Should you even use those? But you always use them one way or the other. It's just a question of awareness. Yeah. So I just leave it there at that point. So we had actually this notion, of course, of the 10 commandments that I advertised earlier. So this is kind of what we came up in the MPA meeting, and it's very simple. So you want to continuously review throughout the process as well what actually success is with the stakeholders. Yeah? Have a detailed proactive plan for this aspect, yeah? So allow integration of new suggestions, but make as well clear where the value sits. Yeah? Does it cost more? Or do we actually cut something out? Yeah? Sometimes value suggestion can actually mean that you get rid of something too, yeah? Or maybe synergy exists because certain products can be integrated and you have suddenly a cheap package somewhere where you before had like a lot of individual parts delivered to your project. Yeah? Profile and quantify your stakeholders in depth. Yeah, so this is you can see who was probably more interested in this. Consult early and overtly and listen. The listening aspect is extremely difficult. Yeah, so I know this from project managers. It's in the nature. They like to talk. They want to chat as well. But listening is such an important part. And often this is lost in the process. Expect some frustration. It takes time. So very important. Don't expect it to happen straight away. Exploit your network and allies. What you say is not the same what they hear. This is another wonderful observation. It comes back to the listening afterwards and seeing if the message actually resonated with the audience. And communicate. This is so important that I have another slide on that one. And then don't try to please everyone all the time. So of course this is negotiation and potential conflict has as well resolution that restrain. Yeah? So this is a clear thing. And this was rated the highest for project managers. This was quite interesting. Don't lose your sense of humor in the process. They are only humans. Yeah? So when you are in a process like that, very important. Keep it light and easy, that everybody wants to collaborate. Don't get into the entanglement and get stuck and everybody's frustrated and angry with each other. Yeah, this is a proactive approach. So there you go. Yeah, from industry leaders and academic leaders, this is the outcome. Yeah, and it was paid quite a bit of money for by this Olympic event. Yeah, they funded the whole gala evening, so which was interesting. Yeah. So with this comes, of course, the word of warning. This is a normative guide, yeah? So this is drawn from experience. Those people have worked long in the industries that you want to go in. Yeah? They are actually internationally as well. Which companies were involved in the Olympics? Just a few names? And where they came from?
G4, they didn't do very well.
Sorry, what was the name?
G4,
yeah?
They didn't do very well.
They didn't do very well. Where did they come from?
I don't know where they came from. I just know that they didn't meet the expectation.
Okay, and what did they do?
Security, isn't it?
Security.
Never enough stuff.
Staffing issues. Okay, yeah, this is not what you want to be remembered for. This is very bad that we are repeating this, but okay, one company who for example, built a stadium. Nobody? Swedish company, yeah, Skanska did a lot of work. Who else? Yeah? Velodrome by whom? Hopkins. Hopkins, yeah, okay, very good. Yeah, I was thinking as well of Bafabiti as well, involved in the infrastructure. A few British companies like BT, American companies, Coca-Cola. What did they sponsor? What is the new sports drink? Oh, no, nobody watched the Olympics. Yeah, Powerade. Yeah, it's quite right. Yeah, so they actually spin off their new product. Yeah, they weren't really into sports drinks. And this was a big thing for them. Do you drink Powerade when you go and do sport?
No, because I.
Oh, okay. Even this is actually kind of good, but I shouldn't advertise. This is the old fight between PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. But yeah, yeah. In a way, there's a notion. Yeah, so different expectations were certainly granted in that, but. Be careful, yeah. The normative guide to stakeholder management and actually how to deal with the temperament and success expectations does matter. And I give you here a cynical example. This was actually the guy that was very involved in the development of the whole stakeholder management. He actually passed away, but nonetheless, in his last years, he had a massive impact on deciding on government level where stakeholder management should take its place, what should be actually consulted in projects in general, and he influenced as well the OCG and actually putting the guide out. And that person was Alan Ross Gobi, and he was a project financer and experienced fund manager from a large capital investment company. And he had a very cynical view, and so he got so frustrated with stakeholders, what they wanted, they shifted their opinion, it was horrendous. So his quote was actually, and he did this in the Economist for me, so this was very good, so I can quote it. The only good stakeholder that I can recall is Professor Van Helsing in the Hammer horror films, who would drive a stake into the vampire's heart. Yeah, so that was a cynical note. Yeah, so please don't fall into that trap. It was a vampire movie where this person, Professor Van Helsing, was like basically hunting those poor creatures called vampires and killing them by ramming a stake through their heart. Yeah, so he had a very cynical view, and he was not a great fan. And he actually volunteered this concept of shareholder domination. Yeah? So the driving of projects through capital, and the return on the investment acceleration. Now, if you want to read up on that. Okay, human element, to come back a step and to remind us, people are much less predictable. And their behaviors much more complicated than any of the other aspects of project with which managers become involved. But it is fundamental importance to try to understand why people might support or oppose the initiatives. To understand people is to have some ability to control their actions. Stakeholder management is not about trying to make everybody happy, but about concentrating on those people who are in the position to influence the successful outcome of the project. I hope that delivers the message. Yeah, so we don't really try to make everybody happy, but it's a functional tool of being aware and steering our projects through it. Yeah? And of course having the involvement. In my research we have a fascinating thing. I study a little bit the institution's response to change. Why is this important for us? Well, with our project-driven economy, and we have such thing, we have actually deregulated a lot. So suddenly a lot of things go that in the past were not allowed. So we can make deals that potentially in the past would have been illegal or not quite right under national law, but with the internationalization, with the globalization, where we have a wider playing field, and this has actually caused a lot of issues. And we had like wonderful scenarios. This is especially if you have had any European money, yeah, European Social Fund. Has anybody worked under European Union funding money in a project? No. There was a quick arm, but I'm not sure if that was a. No, nobody worked on the for public projects implementation. Oh, yeah. Was wonderful, yeah. I had a few case studies in my research that did this. A lot of paperwork, yeah. You have to explain what you're doing when you're doing, and how much it costed you to do it as well. Yeah. So it's quite refined, good for project steering, yeah. But it's about re-establishing stakeholder confidence, and a lot of public sectors that were normally in the seat of looking for the government after these projects. Actually tried to step in and govern it, but realized very quickly that they have the wrong tools and they are actually looking in the wrong places. So what happens actually when we kind of diminish stakeholder confidence? This may have happened in your team. Yeah? So you have somebody that just realizes, well, let's see if this is true. This is probably true for other relationship management elements as well. Yeah, so we start here on this side. This is the emotional response. Yeah. So on the left, on the emotional response axis, we have at the bottom. We are very passive. Yeah. We don't collaborate. We are not active. Active is at the top. Yeah. Collaboration can go as well in the negative, by the way, as we will see in a second. Yeah. And then we have a timeline. Yeah. So at the beginning, yeah, we have the emotional response. We become kind of like we were a little bit outraged, but initially we are not happy to participate in our team anymore. Yeah, we sit a little bit like this here, and it's immobilization. Yeah, so we don't want to do anything anymore. Then we are still confronted with the issue. The natural response would be initially denial, then anger. Yeah, then there's a realization point. Yeah. I'm not sure. Can we not do it this way? This is bargaining, yeah. And then if that doesn't work, then there's a depression. Then there's potentially testing and acceptance. Yeah. So you can see that on an emotional horizon, this is quite a ride. Yeah, this is not what a good atmosphere is built on. This is actually quite painful potentially. Yeah, and it's important to understand it and manage it as well in your team. Yeah, accommodate this. And allow people to actually get out of it. This is, of course, a key. So what can we do with this? First of all, we get it quite often. This may be because costs are increased, yeah, or time scales are stretching. You realize it's actually not possible, or this can happen through many things. Yeah? New strategy then has to be devised around which collation must be built. Yeah? So we are looking for allies. Or for somebody that can help us, yeah, and then we can of course create again the stakeholder confidence. We'll come to that in a second. Remove immediate obstacles to progress as a priority, so that the sense of urgency is actually maintained. Don't let it stand around. This is the worst thing that can happen, yeah. And then try to achieve again short wins. Yeah, so sometimes this is not the direct route to the outcome that you are after, but allows you short wins, which create again a team spirit. Yeah? So it's very, very powerful. And it's better to drip feed as well success. So recognize the small successes that you actually achieve. Because if you are just after the biggest success, this is in particular when you have like long-term. Has anybody committed to long-term projects? No? Maybe. Oh, yeah, what is it? May I ask?
Long term, what kind of long term are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, what do you understand under long term?
Maybe 5-6 years?
Yeah, this is very long term, I would say. Yeah.
The headquarters that we're doing for police here.
Yeah.
So it's been already 3 years, so it's another 2.
Okay, so 5-year commitment, yeah, and this is quite long. And then you need some feedback, right? If you don't get like the small success along the way, then it's very painful. Yeah. For everybody that wants to write their master's dissertation a little bit longer, yeah, and extends the deadline to write it maybe over a year nearly, yeah. You will feel this. Yeah? You want like small feedback. You want to hear like, okay, we are getting there gradually. Yeah? If you do like a research project longer than 3 years, you will know this experience very well. Yeah? So, but in many companies as well. Yeah? So long-term aims are actually quite difficult to achieve. It's sticking with it. Yeah? That is difficult. And trust is, of course, built and maintained by delivering on commitments. Yeah? So be consistent in following the strategy, talk the same language as the stakeholders, but emphasize the positives and avoid stakeholder fatigue, yeah? or in other terms, overwhelming them, yeah? or over-consulting them. Delivering on the commitments, there's an important notion to sense. In a linear business model, what we often do is we ask you to do a workload, and then you can't manage to do it. It's too much. But we have now linear plans to do the same the next day. So what happens? Now on the next day, you don't just have your normal high workload, you get as well the rest from the work that you haven't yet finished. Yeah, so if you have a momentum like this, there are different ways of managing that. We come to that next session actually with a work breakdown structure. But there's importance to realize that, and this goes into stakeholder fatigue. This is when you have to allocate either resources to help that person to deal with a workload, yeah, or make sure that the workload is actually shoveled in a way where it allows them to actually do and achieve the workload. Now, this is the worst thing that can happen. You have team members that never hit the targets on a daily basis. Now, this is really how you grind like a team morale or the trust really, and its highest sense. Yeah, and often it's not the fault of the team members. This is just like bad work allocation and bad time management. Yeah. And then, last but not least, a strategy is a working tool to keep communication with the stakeholders alive. So make sure that you use it as such. It's not a thing that we put in stone and then we stick to it 100%. There are such projects where we have to do this, but most of the time we have actually this flexibility. And project management is exactly the tool that you can use to do so. So and that shouldn't be lost in tactics. Yeah? Okay, quick summary, and then oh, this is a dangerous thing. I think I have started it with a show. Where are we time-wise? Quarter. Okay, perfect. So to just summarize quickly the stakeholders, this was quite dry. Later on we come to more examples. Stakeholder management requires strategies and plans, and in a way we come to that next week, but we have already established expectations and objectives, so this is halfway here. Identify and assess the relative influence of key stakeholders, we have done that. Classify the stakeholders by type, location, and create a strategy for each set. Concentrate on those stakeholders who could most influence the outcome of a project. We have done that. Involve suppliers earlier on the project life cycle, optimally in the conception stage. Yeah, so this was really at the beginning when we actually start thinking about what the project is that we are trying to deliver. And try to understand why people might support or oppose the project. Yeah, it's very, very powerful. Train project leaders in stakeholder management, very important. Yeah? Disseminate information at the right place and the right time over the whole life of the project. And be transparent and allow the maximum amount of knowledge in the consultation process, or what we actually called conception, feasibility, and definition stage. Yeah? And constantly communicate, a very important notion. Be sensitive and on the lookout for stakeholder fatigue, and a little bit keep the humor as well going. This is a very important one. Okay, if you want, we make now 10 minutes, because in the following I have a lot of case studies again. Is that okay? 10 minutes break? Okay, super.